Why is it that Robert Kiyosaki keeps going on and on about how good of an investment silver is? He is the author of Rich Dad Poor Dad, and I believe a lot of people don't actually understand how good of an investment silver is. In this video, I'm going to be going over why I think silver is still an amazing investment in 2025. Now, please know, this is not financial advice. I'm not financially qualified to give you advice. Please do your own research. This is just my personal opinion on why I like silver so much. Now, in this video, I'm going to be covering the 3 reasons why I believe silver is such a fantastic investment. The first reason being because of its industrial demand and how it keeps exceeding supply. The second reason being because of the monetary inflation that we're seeing. And the third reason is outright because it's an undervalued asset. Firstly, we've got to understand, why is it so good on a demand side? Well, firstly, we've got to understand that silver's properties are very special. It's the most conductive metal at 20 degrees, beating copper and gold. And a lot of people use copper because it's considered a cheaper asset compared to silver. But if you really want the best of the best for stuff like computers, hardware, AI, electric vehicles, this is where people continue to go to. It's silver. Its properties make it some of the best. Now, in terms of demand itself, when we look at what silver's usage is, we can see clearly here it's the industrial side that produces all of its demand. 58% of it is believed. And when we look at the exact areas of where silver continues to go to, it goes into areas that are growing. We're seeing areas like electric vehicles, like the solar industry, like computers. That's where silver's demand continues to go, and electronic devices as well. So when demand is increasing in areas that are also growing, we know that silver's demand is high and it's only going to continue to go up. The other thing which I believe no one really does talk about is silver has a completely hidden demand that no one talks about on the military side. Now, when we report about the supply and demand of silver, which I'll show you later on, silver's military side never comes into it at all, and it's actually not reported. The US likes to keep that really hidden. But we know for a fact that silver's used in a lot of military equipment. And in fact, in complete secrecy, the United States has removed 430 million ounces of silver from the West Point Bullion Depository. Now, that's just an alarm bell going off when I'm seeing the military taking so many out. And it's not being reported as well. We know what wars have been happening lately. I don't need to go into detail about that, but we know what silver is being used for rockets, missiles, and a lot of tech. High-level tech is where silver is needed. So the demand is clearly there. And I don't like taking advantage of military campaigns, but it's just a fact that this is what's going on. The other area where silver's not really talked about in demand is in the AI side. As AI continues to grow, you need the right equipment to actually work these massive centers and to store all this information for these AI models so they can actually function correctly. And I believe that's where silver is going to continue to be needed. And that's because of its actual properties. It's got the superior conductivity, it's got thermal stability, and it's got durability. These are things which are all needed in AI. And that's why I believe silver's demand is continuing to go up over and over again. To actually prove this, we can see when we break the numbers down. We're looking at the total supply, which from 2016 to 2025 forecast, the supply outright has actually dropped. It's been pretty stable across 2016 to 2025, but demand continues to grow. We're seeing that it's gone from 993 million ounces all the way up to 1,148 million ounces. So clearly demand's increasing, but we're seeing no signs of a supply increase. I also have to remind you, this demand doesn't include the military side, which we've already seen that the US is taking large amounts of ounces out to support their military campaign. And if we look at this on a market balance, excluding the electronic transferred silver, so ETFs and stuff like that, we can see that since 2019, we've been in a silver deficit. That's 7 years of continued deficits with a 2025 forecast of 187 million ounces worth of deficit. So clearly we're seeing an issue on the demand and supply side for silver, and I believe this is only going to continue to worsen. The other area which we have to consider is the actual devaluing of the dollar, and this is something which we all can't hide. Since 1913, we've seen that the dollar's gone down by and lost 99% of its purchasing power. And this is ultimately fueled by the Fed and their continued printing of money. Look at the M2 money supply. We can see this almost hockey stick-like shape where basically when periods of recession happen, which is highlighted here in gray, the rate of change continues to increase. And since 2020, the total money supply from 2020 to 2025 is about 40% of the total money supply. So this is only worsening, and we're seeing it almost going up at a parabolic rate. And at this point, it's not going to come back, and we're at a point of no return. While silver continues to hold its intrinsic value, when we look at silver valued against the Dow, you can see that it continues to hold on to its value. Silver is a clear counter to any kind of inflation side issues. It continues to hold its value when inflation goes up. And that's what I really like about the investment. As we continue to print more and more money, silver will continue to hold. And I think its returns show that across the last 5 years. And the third reason why I like silver so much is because it's an undervalued asset. And how I know it's an undervalued asset is when I look at the gold and silver ratio. Now, the gold and silver ratio basically values how much gold is worth relative to silver, and we're dividing the price of gold by the price of silver and getting a number. So right now we're sitting at 92. And if I look at this historically, if I compare this gold to silver ratio going back as far as we can see that this value of 92 is high compared to historically. And we're seeing that in general, the average gold to silver ratio is about 60. Now, this is important because when people invest in gold to silver, we use this rule called the 80-50 rule. And what that means is basically when the gold to silver ratio is above 80, we tend to buy purely silver because it's the undervalued asset compared to gold. When it's between 80 and 50, we tend to buy a bit of both. And when it goes below 50, that's when gold is the bargain. Am I saying gold is a bad asset? No, I'm just saying it's overvalued relative to silver. I know for a fact silver is an undervalued asset, and I believe that going forward, based on all these principles, we need to continue to look into silver as an asset. In terms of actually buying silver, we'll go over this more in a future video, but I've got a few principles which I like to think about when buying silver. Firstly, when you buy silver, always buy it in physical form. I don't like ETFs because it's manipulated and the supply is actually mucked around with a bit, so the prices stay down. Always buy it in physical form. That's what truly is running out. We're not running out of paper silver. Secondly, if you are going to buy in physical form, consider going to your local bullion shop. People can buy from eBay or Craigslist, but honestly, I don't trust it as a whole. And I want to buy from people who are legitimate, because the last thing you need is to be scammed. The best ones have a scanner, which I'm going to put a photo of here. And basically this scanner, what it does is it tells you basically the percentage purity of the silver, and it gives you an output, which is usually 99.99. And when you've got that value, that's when you know it's legitimate silver. Also, these bullion shops also really well known for giving you good deals. They'll let you know what the latest deals are on silver if you go there regularly, and I really think it's a good place to start off with. So this is why I think silver is a great investment. I'm going to be going over more stuff in the future, but for me, this is a top investment in 2025.